I have returned, my love. What? Her? Was just a fling. Greetings, hi, TheWarOwl greets you. Once again, we find ourselves in a time of crisis. Our beloved Counter-Strike has been inexorably defaced. Not really, but you'd think that way reading some people's reactions. Calm down. Uncle WarOwl is here now to walk you back from the ledge. Can I put this closer? Like, is it okay if this is in the shot? Because it makes it easier.
Hello, my name is Gloria. This is ASMR. Ooh, they're sexy.
This is the biggest meta change in the history of Counter-Strike. Now, I know I said that last time, but hey, there's always a bigger fish. Forget everything you knew about loss reward in Counter-Strike. Foop, throw it away. Get ready, kids. Here comes the math. This is how it works now. Each team has a loss count variable, which is a whole number, meaning 0, 1, 2, 3, you get the idea. At the start of each half, the loss count for each team is set to 1. When a team loses a round, the loss count is increased by 1. When a team wins a round, the loss count is decreased by 1. Remember, the number cannot be negative, but it can be 0. But, and this is the most interesting thing here, there is no max limit to the loss count variable. Meaning, let's say a team loses the first 10 rounds in a row. So they start at 1 and then you add 10 points to it. That team now has a loss count of 11. So what does the loss count mean? Well, your loss count determines how much money each of your teammates will receive after losing a round. If you have a loss count of 0 and your team loses a round, each player on your team is rewarded with $1,400 at the start of the next round. For every loss count up to and including 4, that reward value is increased by $500. So you multiply the loss count variable by 500, add 1,400 with a max of 3,400. Bet you wish you paid attention in math class now, kids. What? You still don't care? Okay, that's understandable. If you're stupid like me, here's a quick and simple way to count up the loss reward using your fingers. By the way, I'm aware I have small hands. I'll have you know, it doesn't mean anything. Look at the scoreboard. Pick a team. Start with 1 finger. Go quickly through the score line. If the team loses, add a finger. If the team wins, subtract a finger. At the end, count up how many fingers. Multiply by 500 and add 1,400. Well, that's how much money that team is gonna get on the loss. I believe the reason for doing this is to remove the idea of resetting a team. You've probably heard this term before. If a team were to lose 5 rounds in a row, they'd get to the max loss reward. Then, they win 1 round and then lose the next. What would happen is that loss count that we were talking about before would get reset to 0, hence resetting the team, completely resetting their economy. They then have to save 2 rounds in a row, or so probably force buy 1, save the next, or just buy a few pistols with no armor for both of the rounds. Either way, 2 rounds, they don't got guns. I made sure to play a bunch of games with this update so I got a good understanding of how it works in practice. When the games went kind of back and forth, this new update didn't really affect it that much. The only thing I can say is that there was just more money on the field overall, and it was a little bit more complicated for me to kind of predict what the enemy team's money looked like and then what my team looked like as well. It wasn't like intuitive. I actually had to do the math every time instead of just knowing like, okay, they're on kind of a pistol buy here. The case where it did make an impact is where one team got really far ahead economically. There was a game on Inferno I played. My team started T-side. We lost like the first 6 of the first 7 rounds or something like that. So our loss reward was at max. And we were able to use that max loss reward to push the game back into like a tied half because we were able to get a whole bunch of money. Every time we lost, we wouldn't be reset. We'd be like, oh, we can just buy again. Sweet. The other team was livid about this. They were kind of upset. They worked hard to get that early momentum, and it didn't really benefit them as much. We were sort of rewarded for being behind. One thing I do like about this update is that it incentivizes a team that's behind economically and behind in the momentum to try to make the rounds close, and it may motivate them to take more economic risks. The team that's winning a bunch in a row, they can still get economically reset as long as they aren't allowed to build a bank. So that may encourage the team that's behind to go for more like 3 versus 3 retakes instead of just saving the guns to get a buy for the next round because they're going to be able to buy anyway. It may encourage them to go for exit frags instead of just full saving. I mean, the full save meta, to be honest, has gotten kind of boring. I also think we're going to see a lot more light buys because teams will be like, oh, we can buy next round if we only buy this specific amount, so let's buy armor MP9s or armor UMPs this round and get a little light buy out of it. I think we're gonna see more of that. Honestly, I think that this update is gonna make professional Counter-Strike more interesting to watch. In the past, I've referred to this concept as the blue shell effect, after the blue shell from Super Mario Kart, where the player in last place is given an item that homes on to the player in first place and can hit everybody along the way. In racing games, this is called rubber banding, where players who are further behind are given an advantage so they can catch up. The idea of this development methodology is so that everybody can stay around the same area on the track. It makes the game more fun, but it also erodes the competitive integrity of the game. You're rewarding players who screw up, and you're punishing players who are doing something good. It's counterintuitive. You heard me, Mario. Is this the case for this Counter-Strike update? Almost, it's almost there. Why don't we go full Call of Duty and we'll just spawn with whatever you want and it'll just 5-op meta, let's go! As your professor of Counter-Strike, I have some suggestions on how to alleviate some of the negative unintended consequences of this update. First, can we put a cap on the loss reward? Stick it at 5. That way, if a team wins and loses, there's no hard reset. Instead, they get the max loss reward. But it doesn't last for the rest of the damned half. Now, this is a suggestion that I've seen all over, and people have personally told me as a suggestion. How about instead of degrading the loss count by 1 every time, how about we degrade it by 2? That way, it still exists, there's no hard reset, but it's not ridiculous. I mean, either way, it's in the game. You're gonna have to learn it. You're gonna have to adjust to it. As I teased in the intro, we also have some major weapon balance changes. If you watched the last Counter-Strike major, you probably noticed that the M4 meta was entirely replaced by the AUG meta. Players finally figured out the weapon was just better. Now that players have had an opportunity to learn to love the AUG, returning the weapon to its original price of $3,300. A little cheeky there, calm down a little bit with the attitude there, Valve. I feel like I'm in an abusive relationship with a video game. Now that I've learned to appreciate my love, I'm gonna make you work for it. Good change, IMHO. AUG Nerf is not enough. AUG should cost $3,400 though. So let me get this straight. The AUG has been sitting there, readily available in your buy wheel, for the past 5 years, in its current state, as you've been playing competitive Counter-Strike for millions of dollars of prize money. And all of a sudden, it's a problem. The M4A1-S magazine capacity has been increased from 20 to 25. I like this kind of change better. It's not too drastic, it doesn't have the potential to completely shift the entire meta of the game, and it'll encourage more use of the M4A1-S. The M4A4 still has a higher fire rate, 5 extra rounds of mag, and an extra reserve magazine. But the M4A1-S has a suppressor and a better spray pattern. Seems balanced to me. Shotguns are now a lot cheaper. The Nova now costs $10.50 and has an increased penetration power, meaning it can actually shoot through thin cardboard walls. The sawed-off has been reduced to $11.10 and has a slightly higher range. And probably most importantly, the Mag 7 has been decreased to $1,300. The shotguns are probably the least used weapon group in the game, besides like, I don't know, the friggin' Negev? That's because they're situational. They only work on specific positions, and if you have to rotate, no bueno. Keep in mind, they still all have a $900 kill reward, so you can buy a Nova for $10.50, get a single kill with it, and pretty much make up the entire cost. I think the main reason people don't use the Nova in particular is the armor penetration. It only has 50% armor penetration, meaning it only does half damage against armored players. I'd only ever consider buying this on anti-eco, but those probably aren't going to exist anymore. I still think people are going to purchase cheap SMGs or Famas Khalil Scout Deagle when they can't afford rifles, because they're more versatile than a shotgun. However, I still think we'll see the Mag 7 used situationally. There's also a new flashbang assist feature. If a player has been blinded by your flashbang and dies, it'll show up as an assist on the kill feed. This is a cool feature that gives some credit to support, but it can have some unintended side effects. It gives info to the other team. For example, if you know a specific player is an AWP player, and he shows up on the flashbang assist, you now have a general location of that AWP player. I think this is something that should only show up for the team that threw the flashbang. There's also a bunch of map changes for Canals and Wingman Vertigo. Thank you to all the diligent players that continued testing Bombsite B. Next note, blocked run boost from T-spawn to Bombsite B. Whoa, I'm gonna need you to calm down with the sass there, Valve. We don't want any toxicity in our online murder simulators. Now, I've had a theory for a while that Valve is using Wingman to test Vertigo and introduce it as a 5v5 competitive map into the next map pool. I had a whole video written down about it, but Unbox a Fragathon Prism Case Special! Oh. Thank you folks very much for watching. I'm TheWarOwl and I still have no closer. Let's be honest, we're not gonna do any of that math. We're just gonna buy whatever we feel like.